My parents favored my brother and disowned me for starting a business. Now that I'm successful and he's unemployed, they expect me to hire him. So I'm a 29-year-old guy, and out of the blue, my parents, who I haven't heard from in 5 years, reached out. Turns out they want me to help my brother Craig. Craig's 31 and has always been their golden boy. They never even tried to hide it. He was better at everything, especially school, and my parents made sure I remembered that, always reminding me that I needed to step up my game if I wanted to be anywhere near his level. Craig got into a top college, and 5 years ago, he landed a gig as the youngest vice president in his company's history. He had a fancy job right out of college and was doing great. My parents couldn't stop bragging about it, making it the standard I was supposed to beat. But I never wanted that life. A 9 to 5 wasn't for me. I always wanted to be an entrepreneur, ever since I knew what that word meant. After dabbling in various jobs and gaining industry knowledge, I decided to start my own business in modern and edgy car accessories. I did my homework, had a solid business model, and was ready to roll. I thought my parents would support me, despite their favoritism towards Craig. After all, they're my parents, right? So, 2 days after a party they threw for Craig's new job, I approached them with my plan. I expected some feedback, but they just laughed, thinking I was joking. When I said I was serious, they advised me to stick to my current job, saying they'd be embarrassed if I failed. They didn't think I was capable and didn't want to introduce their son as a failure compared to Craig. I was pissed. We argued, and I told them I'd go ahead with my business, with or without their support. They said fine, but if I did, they'd cut me out of their lives because I'd be an embarrassment. They'd been planning to have this talk with me for a while, saying I needed to either stick to my job and not embarrass them or go ahead and fail on my own. So I cut them out of my life and haven't spoken to them since. Craig, of course, sided with them, but I didn't care. He was always too arrogant for my taste. I dove headfirst into my car accessories business. It was a risky move, and I wouldn't recommend it to anyone without thinking it through. But it worked out. I quit my job, and within a few months, I got some investors and started my business. It was tough at first, living paycheck to paycheck and relying mostly on word of mouth. But after a year and a half, things picked up, and there was no looking back. Now, I'm doing pretty well. I've got a nice apartment, live in a great neighborhood, drive a cool car, and have everything I dreamed of. I'm not a millionaire, but I'm far from the failure my parents thought I'd be. I proved them wrong, and I'm really happy about it. I don't even feel the need to rub it in their faces anymore. I haven't been in touch with my parents for the past 5 years. I even got married to my girlfriend of 8 years, and we found out she was pregnant last month. Despite all these milestones, I haven't tried to contact my parents. They know where to find me. They could ask any relative. I know they keep tabs on me through the family, but they've never reached out. I guess that's just their way of dealing with things. So, last week, they finally got in touch with me and asked if I'd be down to meet up. I chatted with my wife about it, and she was like, "Yeah, go ahead and see what's up." Their message didn't give much away, so I was kind of clueless about what to expect. But still, I decided to head over to their place. When I got there, they were super nice, which was weird because they were never that nice to me, even when I lived with them. They were all smiles and small talk, but I could tell they were building up to something. Eventually, they couldn't ignore the elephant in the room any longer. They told me they heard about how well my business was doing and wanted to congratulate me. No apologies or anything, just a, "We're glad you proved us wrong" kind of thing, which was nice, I guess. I just smiled because I didn't know what else to say. Then, they changed the topic to Craig. Apparently, he's had a rough couple of months. His company went through massive layoffs, and even upper management got axed, including him. So he's been at home doing nothing for 4 months, feeling pretty down about it. My parents went on about how he's been job hunting but isn't having much luck, and he's kind of depressed. I was confused about why they were telling me all this because, what could I do? But I let them talk, curious to see where this was going. Finally, they got to the point and asked if I could hire Craig at my company. They said he was too bummed to apply for jobs himself and that the offers he's getting are below his pay grade. They thought a job with me would pay well and leverage his expertise. I didn't know what to say, so I told them I needed time to think about it and would get back to them. I purposely didn't say yes because I needed to process it. I should have known there was a catch to them reaching out after all these years. After going home and discussing it with my wife, I decided to decline. She works in a bank and doesn't have much to do with my business, but she said this was a professional decision and I should do what felt right. She also pointed out that my parents didn't seem genuine in their attempt to reconnect, so I didn't owe them anything. Plus, I hadn't agreed to help Craig out, so why should I feel obligated to give him a job? I didn't plan on telling them my decision right away because I knew they'd probably make me out to be the bad guy. But they started texting me every day for an answer, and when I ignored them, they called me 2 days ago and demanded a response. So I told them I'd thought it over and just didn't think I could work well with Craig. We never had a good relationship, so I didn't feel like I owed him a job. They totally lost it, started yelling at me about all the things they did for me growing up, raising me, paying for everything, and all that. They said I was turning my back on them when they needed me, which felt really unfair. I mean, they did those things because I depended on them. It's not like they went above and beyond out of the goodness of their hearts. I tried to explain that working with Craig just wouldn't be a good fit, but they kept screaming. They hadn't contacted me for 5 years since they refused to invest in my business, so I felt like they had no right to expect favors from me now. They said they thought I'd let go of past grudges and be willing to help the family now that I was doing well. The argument got pretty heated, and I eventually told them I didn't want to talk anymore. I hung up and blocked their numbers. Since then, I've been really I'm feeling all kinds of mixed up because of what my parents said about how they would have helped if I were in Craig's position. I talked it over with my wife, and she thinks they're just trying to mess with me, so I shouldn't fall for it. They haven't even apologized yet, but somehow they still expect me to help out my brother. Craig was never nice to me when we were kids, and I got picked on all the time. My wife is definitely right, but I still can't shake this nagging guilt. It's all just really confusing and weird. So, here's an update. Thanks a ton for your responses to my last post. It's been a while since I last talked to my parents, and honestly, what I did wasn't such a big deal. It's not like Craig will never find another job, I just don't want to work with him. My wife and I discussed it and decided to stick to our guns, but my parents are having none of it. They're going around telling everyone I'm jealous of Craig, like I've been waiting for this moment to spite my family. They're seriously overreacting. They've been texting every relative about this, even those who don't really talk to them. It's just absurd. They're clearly seeking attention, but I'm not giving in. I've blocked them, and I'm not unblocking them for this. Some relatives did reach out, and I explained everything to them. Most of them already knew how strained my relationship with my parents is, so they weren't surprised. They even told me not to worry about my parents and that they weren't going to turn against me. Honestly, I'm feeling a bit better now. Plus, my wife is pregnant, so I have more important things to focus on. We were planning to announce the pregnancy in a few weeks, but I might do it sooner just to make my parents back off. I think it's a good idea, though I'm not sure if it'll work. My parents can be pretty heartless and might still try to bother us, even knowing about the pregnancy. Update 2. So, my wife and I announced our pregnancy on social media a couple of days ago. It's been about 10 days since I last talked to my parents. Most of my family congratulated us, but then I got this nasty email from an unknown sender saying our child would suffer because of how I treated my family. I'm sure it's from my parents because who else would say something so awful? I didn't tell my wife about the email to avoid stressing her out, especially since she's in the early stages of pregnancy. It's disappointing to read such things, but I decided to handle it myself. I went to my parents' house to talk it out, but they wouldn't even open the door, probably because they knew they were in the wrong. So I just yelled at them from outside. I told them they had no right to say such horrible things, especially given how they treated me during my childhood and the last 5 years. They never helped me when I was struggling, but now they want a piece of my success. I said that whatever they were trying wasn't working and that it was just pushing me further away. I also told them I never wanted to speak to them again and that even if they apologized, I wouldn't forgive them. I made it clear they won't get any help from me when they retire or get to see their grandchild. After that, I left and went home. Honestly, I feel relieved. I'd been holding this in for a long time, and it was high time I let it out. I haven't told my wife about this confrontation yet because I don't want to upset her, and I probably won't until after the pregnancy. Update 3. Hey, so after I met up with my parents last week, they decided to lay low for a bit and not do anything drastic. I even hosted a pregnancy announcement party at my place for some family and close friends. Honestly, I was half expecting them to pull something on that day, but they didn't. So I thought they were finally moving on from this whole mess, and I was trying to do the same. But then, this morning at work, I got a call from Craig. It was super weird because he stopped talking to us like 5 years ago. I had no idea what he wanted. For a hot second, I thought he was going to ask me for a job, just like our parents did, and I really didn't want to deal with that drama again. So I ignored his first call, but he kept calling and even sent me a message saying it was urgent and that he needed to talk. He assured me he didn't need anything from me and just wanted to chat about something that had been bugging him. I decided to pick up, and we talked. He told me he'd been pretty down lately and hadn't been talking to anyone or checking messages. Only a couple of days ago, he finally read them and noticed everyone's talking about how unfair it was for our parents to push me into giving him a job. Craig was confused because he'd been in regular contact with our parents, and they hadn't mentioned a thing. He confronted them about it, and they outright denied everything. But he felt they were lying, so he called me to get the truth. He confided in our parents about his job troubles and never once asked them to involve me. He didn't understand why they'd force me to help him when he never asked for it. I thought about it and decided to be honest with him. I told him what our parents had said and how they pushed me to help him out. I mentioned that maybe they genuinely wanted to support him at first, but eventually it turned into them harassing me, which wasn't cool. I apologized to Craig for what he was going through, knowing how much his job meant to him, but I also made it clear that we'd never work well together, which is why I turned down our parents' request. Craig understood and admitted he wasn't keen on working with me either. It wasn't a dig at me, he just wasn't in the right headspace to work with anyone right now. My parents made it sound like he had no job offers, but he actually did. He just wanted to take a break by choice. He vented for a while, and I let him, because despite everything, he needed it. He was angry at how our parents made him look desperate and gave people the wrong impression. He planned to confront them and apologize to me for what I'd been put through. It was really mature of him, and I felt he'd grown up a lot. We didn't patch things up completely, but it was a good talk, and that's enough for me. Update 4. So, a couple of days ago, Craig actually confronted our parents. It didn't go well. They got super defensive, saying they were just trying to help because they thought Craig taking a break wasn't a good idea and that he needed to get back to job hunting ASAP. They had a huge fight, with Craig accusing them of trying to control his life and never letting him make his own decisions. Our parents didn't take that well and started listing all the things they'd done for him, which were just normal things their parents do. I don't get why they feel the need to brag about it. So, they did something as a favor, but it wasn't really a favor. They had to do it anyway. Things got ugly, and now Craig isn't talking to them. And guess who's getting blamed for all this mess? Yep, you guessed it. Me, once again. I just don't get how I keep becoming the scapegoat for every single drama they create. This time, there weren't any personal confrontations. They just went ahead and posted about it on Facebook. But lucky for me, all our relatives jumped to my defense and called my parents out on their nonsense. They reminded them how they've been terrible parents not only to me, but also to Craig. Instead of supporting him during tough times, they pressured and tried to control him, making him look like the bad guy when they should have been there for him, emotionally and morally. After receiving tons of comments from our relatives, my parents decided to delete the post and block everyone from our family. Yep, you heard it right. Now they're pretty much ostracized by everyone, and I couldn't be happier about it. As for Craig and me, he's apologized for his past behavior, and we're working on fixing our relationship. But right now, the most important thing in my life is my wife, and I'm super excited to become a dad.